Live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. The latest edition dropped this morning at 6 a.m. Get the next one at 6 a.m. Monday. Adam Caplan is in the house. I feel like I haven't talked to Adam in like a year, and that's not just saying because it's 2021. It's been a while since I've been here, and an Adam Caplan Football at 4 segment has been on the same time. But welcome back, Adam.
Mike, I haven't confirmed this, but there's a rumor you set a company record of most vacation weeks in 6 weeks.
Well, it's funny.
I mean, my goodness.
It's funny because I usually break it up a lot, but I didn't take any vacation until December. Because
I know when I actually had a real job, I don't know, in the 18th century, I was told to take all my vacation weeks or I would lose them by the end of the year. So I'm assuming that's what happened with you.
Well, I mean, because of the COVID situation, like people can't come in the building and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of was forced to come in. And then there's certain times of the year where I'm not allowed to take off. So I had I strategically have. So it fell into where I had all these days where I had to lose them. So here I am.
And what did you do, by the way, before we get started? What did you do on your time off there?
I listened to Josh and Broads and Football at 4.
Yeah. There you go. And hopefully Inside the Birds.
Actually, and I did listen to the Inside the Birds podcast. We put in a new bathroom at my house.
Oh, nice. Did you?
Yeah, we redid the bathroom. We were working on the back porch. We did some around the house stuff, that kind of stuff, clean the gutters, yada, yada. And here we are, 2021.
Nice.
Great to be back.
There you go. New Year. Happy New Year, guys. Yeah, I'm glad to be back on the station. And what's going to be a very interesting offseason, one of the most interesting we've had in years.
When you're bad, the good part about being bad is the off season is more interesting, right? I mean, you get a bad regular
season. I can't
season.
deny it. It's helped our show numbers. I was just Jeff and I were exchanging some comments, blown away by the traffic we've gotten the last couple of days. We get it. You're absolutely right, Mike. You nailed that one. Turmoil creates traffic when you have an Eagles podcast. There's no doubt about it.
It does. So let's start with this. Obviously, the Eagles let go of Rich Scangarello, Marty Morningwig. They will not return. They were both on one-year deals. So let's start off with why. Why are these guys not coming back?
Yeah, so here's my take. So with Scangarello, it was real simple. After the two coaches were not retained last year, Mike Groh, the OC, and Carson Walsh, the wide receivers coach, but particularly with Groh, they wanted more innovation. This is coming from the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, to the coaches and to Howie Roseman, the general manager. The owner wanted this to be a top-5 offense. He wanted to look like other teams. The Niners running the most pre-snap motion last season at 70%. That's a ton. That's a ton. You're talking about 70% of your offensive plays you're running pre-snap motion. The Eagles were near down the bottom with pre-snap motion. Now, since the Dallas game this year, the Eagles were way up in pre-snap motion. But for whatever reason, Mike, it didn't help. And as we reported on Inside the Birds exclusively, after that Dallas game, the owner made his displeasure to the offensive coaches, some of them, that he was not happy with the direction of the offense. And there you go, two coaches not retained. The big one, though, of the two would be Scangarello, because he was the guy, okay? He was the guy that's supposed to come in here and bring in part of that Kyle Shanahan offense and also some of the concepts with that Sean McVay ran, and unfortunately it didn't work out. And I know they were excited to bring him in because the word around the league was he did a good job with the Broncos as OC. He had a disagreement, I'm told, with their head coach Vic Fangio, and he was not retained. But here, listen, they were expecting a lot more, and they got less.
Yeah, and obviously the offense was a mess. They mentioned too many voices in the room. Doug mentioned it. I think he mentioned like 5 or 6 different things at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the reasons why they were hired, but do we definitively think they need to be replaced? You got Rich Scangarello, who was a senior offensive assistant coach, and Marty Morningwig, who was an offensive consultant. None of these guys really called plays or did anything that anybody would deem all that important.
Yeah, that's the point of this. Now, Marty, as I'm told, was working with Jalen Hurts because of his experience with mobile quarterbacks, Steve Young, Michael Vick, Donovan McNabb, and others. So that's why he was brought in. And also, he's very close to Doug Peterson. They also have the same agent. But he only got a 1-year deal because he had what you would call an extraneous job, not non-essential. And then Scangarello got a 1-year deal. Remember, he was still being paid by the Broncos, and the staff didn't know him, so they wanted to see how it worked, and it did not work out. So I agree with your point. And boy, talk about giving away the answers to the test. Doug Peterson gave it out in his press conference, Mike, last Friday. He made it very clear, in his words, that he wanted one voice, which means he wanted to streamline the process, and Morningweg and Scangarello were the results of that.
Will there be an offensive coordinator in 2021?
This is probably other than whether they're going to trade Wentz or keep him. The question clearly is whether they're going to have an offense coordinator. My understanding from the talks this week is both sides understand the importance of it. Look, they try to hire Hunter. They tried to hire one last year. They talked to a bunch of guys. The big one was Graham Harrell, the OC of USC. I'm told, source close to him, that the non-starter was Doug not willing to give up plays. And unless Peterson's willing to give up plays, it's going to be hard for them to get somebody to leave a really good job where they're calling plays just to come to the NFL from college football. That's not what you want to do when you come from a top conference. Now, when you look at someone in the National Football League that's not with the Eagles, there are certain guys that they could look at. But the thing is, most guys who call plays before are going to want to call it. So that brings us to Press Taylor and whether he will be the offense coordinator or not. I know a lot of people are asking about it, and we discussed it pretty much at length in the Inside the Bird show that popped this morning. It's also you could see on YouTube if you want. But we discussed it. We put a lot of time into this one. Moshe and I gave our strong opinions on that, and I really suggest that you listen.
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem that would be a very popular choice, just staying
No, it would not be. No, it would not be. Let me give you a Cliff Notes version, okay? I understand people have a lot of questions and have angst about it. We've been saying, guys, for the last 2 months, particularly myself, how could you excuse this offense and these coaches for the regression of their top two quarterbacks? Wentz is obvious, and Nate Sudfeld has a 2-year regression where he had not been active since week 1 prior to the week 17 game. So how in the world could you possibly justify or sell a potential promotion for him? Now, as I've said, and I'm not going to run away from it because I did say it. I did say that I wasn't reporting; it was an opinion. I just felt strongly that he would have to be reassigned based on the information that I've been gathering, and based on I know that Jeffrey Lurie's made it very clear that he was not happy with the offense. And by the way, Press Taylor is the highest-ranking offensive coach other than Doug Peterson in terms of responsibility. And they had a bottom 5 offense, only 4 wins. And, okay, folks, did you see the reporting that the Inquirer had about Jeffrey Lurie left practice in disgust this season? I believe that's true. It's not a secret that this offense was a disappointment and ownership was disappointed. So I ask you guys, can you really sell Press Taylor as the offense coordinator? Your thoughts?
It doesn't appear on our Twitter mentions. I mean, about an hour ago, Sal Pal said he'd be beyond shocked if Press Taylor wasn't the coordinator. And, of course, people are responding to that tweet. I feel like the computer's going to fall on my face the way.
Listen, Sal, look, we know Sal knows Doug. I mean, Sal always puts that awesome text. He used to do it before every game.
Yep.
Maybe he has some intel, but what I'm saying is this.
Oh, you're right. It doesn't appear that that's sellable.
Sell it. Yeah, you can't sell it. You just can't. But hey, I'm not Doug Peterson. I'm not Jeffrey Lurie or Harry Roseman.
Okay, well, there's a lot of layers here. So the offense was bottom 5. It was terrible. How much blame goes to Taylor and Peterson, and how much of that inside that building do they put on offensive line, injuries? Jackson gets hurt. Rieger missed time. Ertz missed time. Goddard missed time. Sanders missed time. You get what I'm saying.
Mike, look, they're well aware of the issues. They know the injuries are certainly a factor. But that has nothing to do with the play design or play calling. That's the problem. It's more play design than play calling. I think we kind of overrate that. Sometimes I think that we look at it and say, oh, it must be the play calling. Well, at first, it's the play design, and that has been a major, major problem. Really the entire season. So it's got to get better. There's no question about it. When you go, we talked about the pre-snap motion. Well, by the way, folks, that's put in the game plan. That's done in the classroom environment, or obviously with the players over Zoom, and then in practice. But the fact of the matter is, the play design this season has been a major disappointment because when they fired Mike Groh, that came from the owner. It's not a secret. It's been well reported by us and several other outlets. It's because Jeffrey Lurie was disgusted with the offense last season. Yeah, sure. Wentz Wentz was playing with street free agents at the final quarter of the regular season, did a great job. But when you look at the play design and structure, it's totally unacceptable, and that's the way that everybody looks at it. It's not just injuries; it's way more than that.
Well, how about this? When we look about the next coaching staff that's going to come in, you mentioned how Laurie stepped in with the Mike Groh. Do we know if Doug even has the power to hire the next coach, or is it going to be the owner and the front office again?
Yeah, well, look, he controls, Doug, technically, Hunter, controls his own coaching staff, is the way I understand, but that doesn't mean the owner who owns the business, the football team, can't say, listen, I don't agree with that. I asked Joe Banner this, the former Eagles president, and he explained it to me a while back, probably 6 or 8 weeks ago, because I was asking about coaches' contracts and how it works. He says, listen, let's say, I'm just giving you a scenario, okay? Let's say Peterson wanted to hire someone from another team that doesn't have a great track record of offense, but it's a friend of his who he likes, who think he would work well with. The Eagles do the research, and particularly Roseman and Laurie and others, and they look at it and say, you know what, this guy does not have a track record of success. And Laurie doesn't agree with it, then they have an issue. Where Doug could say, listen, I want this guy in there. I'm allowed to hire my own coaches with your approval. And if he disapproves, they'll look at Doug, would look at the language of the contract. I mean, that's just the way it works here. Look, I remember a prime example of this back in '98 or '99. Vic Fangio was the Colts defensive coordinator. They were going to move from a 34 to a 43 defense. Jim Morris said, you can't fire him, and the Colts said, yes, we can, because he can't coach this defense. And Jim Moore, by the way, that's why he got fired. He was not going down with the ship. He stood up for his coach, which is commendable, but that cost him his job and others their jobs. So we'll see what happens here. I mean, look, they had their meetings this week. We'll see what Doug wants to do with his coaching staff and how Doug's going to rebound going forward here. It's been a tough season. I said this, guys, on our show for the last couple weeks. I'll admit it, I was wrong. I thought that at least this team should have been 8-8 with this roster, but I don't know about you guys. This team should have been way better than 4-11-1.
I would agree with that. Now, I want to get your take on this. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast, which, don't forget, drops Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 a.m. So listen to today's edition. They go a lot deeper into some of these topics. But one of the things is, in 2012, they had 4 offensive linemen injured. The next year, they won 10 games. Now, Andy got fired. They brought Chip in. But, a lot of people say, wow, Chip was great. Well, he had those 4 offensive linemen back, and that really changed a lot for this team. Is getting Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, and that offensive line back in order, is that enough to take you from a 4-win team to what you said? They could be like an 8-win team, and then they add a couple more pieces. Is it that simple that just fixing that offensive line could change this team overnight?
Yeah, and they also have there are 5 key linemen out. Yeah, if you look at all the guys that got hurt. But, the problem is, Mike, if you look at Brandon Brooks, and I know he's done an unbelievable job of rehab where he actually returned to practice in Week 17. He was never going to play. Coming back from his torn Achilles, but that's just an amazing job and credit to him. And he's in great physical shape. But again, he's in his 30s. Lane Johnson, as he said, having his ankle rebuilt at 30 years old. You don't know if he'll be the same this coming season. You look at Jason Kelsey's still under contract. He's 1 more year left. He's signed through 21. Talked to someone close to Jason this week. Jason is going to take some time off, try to figure out what he wants to do with his career. Although I'm told Jason probably will go into coaching or something like that after he's done. But look, 3 starters over 30, that's not good. And they don't really have, by the way, other than Dillard and Mailata, they don't have their guys who could potentially start on the interior unless they move, say, Malo to center, which could happen. He was drafted, by the way, to be Kelsey's replacement because Kelsey was not playing well at the time of that draft, the draft in 16, and then he turned his career around. So they got a lot of questions, Mike. Quite frankly, they got to get significantly younger this offseason. They know that, and I think they will attempt to do that.
All right, let's flip over to the defense because they need a coordinator on the defensive side of the ball. There's so many questions here because this guy has power, right? He has the ability to really run the defense with nobody telling him what to do. So let's start with this. Is there an in-house candidate that is a safe guy that they don't have to bring in a guy from outside who wants to come in and really do what they want to do? They say, hey, this guy's been here. Let's stick with this guy because of the scheme that they have with the players that they have.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be Matt Burke, who's a D-line coach, who's a Jim Schwartz protege. That way they'd be able to keep the wide 9. But we did report on our last Sunday show, our pregame show, that they're not only not married to the wide 9, they're open to any potential defensive scheme, but the way it's explained to me by team sources that they're not going to, Mike, just change the scheme because they want to change the scheme, and the pieces don't fit. The scheme will have to fit the players they have. So right now, their front is more for the wide 9 front, where the ends are way out of the tackle box. But they're not opposed to changing it. So, for instance, they even if they don't go with Matt Burke or Marquand Manuel, who knows the Seattle scheme, they could go outside, go for it, Gus Bradley. Or Joe Barry, by the way, is a terrific coach. He was a runner-up to be the defense coordinator with the Rams. He's their linebackers coach and assistant head coach. There are plenty of candidates on the outside they could bring in. Like it's funny, not that it's easy to fill a defense coordinator spot. It's not, but there are a lot of good names that are going to be available that were either their teams out of the playoffs or the coaching staff got fired or whatever. But it's going to be a little bit harder on offense because, as you're talking about the D coordinator would have carte blanche here. He certainly would, but the offensive coordinator would not here if they go on the outside.
How did you view the Jim Schwartz tenure? He takes a lot of heat. Of course, they did win the Super Bowl, but, he plays the sticks, and he's not aggressive. He doesn't blitz. But ultimately, I think he held that team involved in a lot of situations. But it is a controversial guy.
He was, Hunter, because here's the thing. From the purest standpoint, you hate it that he doesn't like the blitz, and that's, the Jim Washburn, the father of the wide 9, he hated it, and that's where Schwartz learned the defensive front. So I would say mixed results. I would say good rather than bad. It's not just the sticks defense. It's the biggest knock that Mosher and I found out from our sources for 2 years, and it's definitely true from around the league, is that people would do advanced work on the Eagles because their team was going to play them. Virtually say the same thing. Lack of pre-snap disguise. If you could hold up against their front 4, you're going to win because their secondary is going to be under siege. The way you beat the Eagles is you always throw it. You don't come out running. That's the way you win, and that's what has happened in the last 3 seasons, particularly the last 2. And that's been a problem. That's something that I would think that if they do not stick with the wide 9 front, and if they go with a different scheme, a different 43 scheme, or even go with a 34, I would expect it to be someone who's had really good success forcing turnovers. That's another part of Schwartz's defense. And I know Jim's been defensive about it, but it's an excuse. Talking to people who really know Jim's defense, it's absolutely an excuse, and that's the one real negative is the lack of turnovers. It's really not good. But if you look at except for this season kind of on a lower standpoint, but typically Schwartz's defense is finished very, very well and usually finish in the top 10 in the important categories other than turnovers.
All right, 2 in-house candidates you mentioned. Anybody outside that the Eagles have connections to or would be intrigued by?
Raheem Morris will be a great one. Now, he's had some head coaching interviews. He already interviewed for the Falcons job. He was a D coordinator. Now he got promoted to interim head coach. He's very, very aggressive. He could run a variety of schemes, but his scheme is the Tampa 2, and he could also run cover 3 Seattle scheme. He would be a great one. He would be the top guy in terms of guys who would be available. He would be terrific. Ted Monachino, who is the outside linebackers coach for the Bears, the Eagles had interest in when he was with the Ravens. He could run a 34 or 43. He would be really good. Aaron Glenn, I absolutely love, who's the DB's coach of the Saints, who's getting a couple of head coach interviews. He's terrific. From a long-term cornerback, you might remember him with the Jets. He'd be great. Also, I'm told he's had 2 years of scouting experience on the pro and college level, so that would help the Eagles a little bit. It's always good to tie up the scouting with the coaches. So there are plenty of names. Again, defensive coordinator is not a problem. The big one is going to figure out what they're going to do with the offensive coordinator position. And my understanding is they definitely want to fill it. It's just about how they're going to do it.
There you go. A little synopsis of the beginning of this offseason and, of course, the 6th pick in the NFL draft. We'll start to dive into that as well because a very controversial thought in Philadelphia, Adam, would be drafting a linebacker at number 6.
Oh, my goodness, Armageddon.
If you look at mock drafts, there's a linebacker going at number 6 in just about every single one of them. So maybe they bucked that trend for the first time.
Yeah, but again, is that an outside linebacker pass rusher? Like you just got to define exactly what kind of linebacker it is because I highly doubt they'll draft a true linebacker. Parsons is not a true linebacker. He's just not. Yeah. He's a pass rusher. He's more than that. He's just more than – he's a great player, but he's not a pure – he's a pure linebacker. I don't see it that way. And again, the Eagles have not done it in decades, so it's hard to see them doing it.
There he goes. Of course, Adam Caplan, Inside the Birds, the Inside the Birds podcast. It dropped this morning. Make sure you get your birds fixed every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It drops at 6 a.m. and right here during Football at 4 on the Sports Bash. Thank you, Adam.
Guys, thank you.